alayhi salam. Inshallah, to make us not from amongst those people who takhallafa an al-Hussein, who fall back, who do not join that caravan of Abi Abdullah, but rather we do join, inshallah. So that's what we're trying to do in these nights. Yesterday we spoke a little bit, first of all, a bit about the kind of importance of the aza of Imam Hussein and some of the etiquette that we can try to work on to incorporate and uphold on these nights. Inshallah, I'll add a little bit about that right now. And then yesterday we also spoke about the first kind of teaching of Imam Hussein that we wanted to talk about so that we can learn from it and benefit from it in our lives. And that was that of giving thanks, being somebody who is thankful in our life. Inshallah, we will also move forward from that today. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So just a little bit about the importance of these nights and how these blessed gatherings are so important and so valuable in the eyes of Allah, in the eyes of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. In one hadith from Imam al-Rida alayhi salam, we have that he's talking about his own father, Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, that how Imam Kadhim alayhi salam would be in the month of Muharram. Okay, so today is the first of Muharram. How would the Ahlul Bayt act? Okay, every other culture, most other cultures, New Year is a happy time. People light fireworks, people party, people, I don't know, get together and do fun things. But not the Shia with the coming of the new lunar year. Imam Rida alayhi salam says, كان أبي إذا دخل شهر المحرم لا يرى ضاحكا وكانت الكآبة تغلب عليه. When Muharram would enter, my father, Imam Kadhim alayhi salam, would not be seen laughing. His sadness, his sorrow, his grief would overwhelm him. And that would be the case until 10 days passed. And then the peak of this grief, the most sad of his situation would be on the day of Ashura. That would be the day of his calamity, of his sorrow, of his crying. Like I also indicated yesterday, we should really value these gatherings. These gatherings, again, in ahadith we have, are the object of the love of the Ahlul Bayt. We have this from Imam Sadiq that indeed I love such majalis, where the remembrance of the Ahlul Bayt, the ahadith of the Ahlul Bayt are narrated. We should value this. It has not always been the case that the Shia community were able to freely gather together. There have been times in the past when people would gather in fear in the basements of their houses, worried about the tyrant, oppressive rulers finding out what they were doing and that they would be killed or imprisoned or tortured if they knew that they were Shia and if they were commemorating the aza of the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam. Perhaps that's why if we look at this very famous narration to do with the first of Muharram, it's a very beautiful narration also from Imam Rida alayhi salam that I thought I would narrate to you. There's one of the companions of Imam Rida comes to the Imam on the first of Muharram. His name is Rayyan bin Shabib. Perhaps that's the reason why what I just said, that there was a lot of the aza was hidden. It was something that was not, people were not in the time of the Banu al-Abbas, Banu Umayyah, the Shia were not free. They couldn't talk openly about such things. And so the Imam is teaching this companion of his that, do you know what day it is today? Do you know what happened in this month? As if maybe that Shia didn't know this. He had to be taught this by the Imam. So he comes to the presence, Rayyan bin Shabib comes to the presence of Imam Rida alayhi salam on the first of Muharram, and there is a lengthy conversation that happens. I won't read all of it, but I will read a part of it. The Imam says, O son of Shabib, indeed the month of Muharram was a month that before Islam, in the days of Jahiliyyah, in the ignorant, that period of ignorance prior to Islam, even those pre-Islamic Arabs, they honored this month. They considered this month to be a sacred month. It was from the Ashhurul Hurum. But alas, this ummah This ummah did not recognize the hurma, the sanctity of this month, nor did they recognize the sanctity of the Prophet of Allah. What did they do? They killed, in this very month, they killed his progeny, they imprisoned his women. May Allah never forgive them. Then Imam Rida starts to recite a musibah and tell us many beautiful points. He says, Yabna Shabib in kunta bakiyan li shay'in fabki lil Hussein. This is the importance of crying for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. He says, O son of Shabib, if there is anything you're going to cry for, then you should cry for Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Different ways we can understand this. What does that mean? Maybe one of the understandings we can take out of it is that no matter what, and alhamdulillah, the Shia community, we have this culture. We have been taught by the Ahlul Bayt that when we gather to remember our own loved ones, when we have a majlis, like today there was a majlis in remembrance of this Sayyid Marhum who passed away, we normally remember Imam Hussein. We connect our own grief to the grief of Imam Hussein. This is in a sense maybe one of the meanings we can take out of this. In kunta bakiyan li shay'in fabki lil Hussein ibn Ali ibn Abi Talib. Then a little bit later, Imam Rida, I won't read everything, he says, O son of Shabib, verily my father told me from his father, from his grandfather, that when my grandfather Hussein was killed, the sky rained down blood, and red clay, red earth came down from the skies. Then he says, O son of Shabib, if you cry for Hussein until a tear or your tears flow down on your cheeks, then God will forgive all of your sins. May they be, regardless of whether they are greater sins or smaller sins. O son of Shabib, if you would like to meet Allah Ta'ala Azza wa Jal without any sin on you, without any sin upon you, then go and do ziyarah of Hussein. O son of Shabib, if you would like to have these palaces in paradise with the Prophet of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, then send la'na on the killers of Hussein. Two more lines. O son of Shabib, if you would like to have the reward of those people who were martyred along with Hussein alayhi salam, then whenever you remember him, say this line, Ya laytani kuntu ma'ahum fa'afuza fawzan 'azima. That how I wish that I had been with them and I could have attained this great success. And the last line, O son of Shabib, if you would like that, if you would be pleased that you are with us the Ahlul Bayt, you have these high positions in paradise, then be sad with our sadness and be happy with our happiness. And it is upon you to have our wilayah. For verily, if a man were to have wilayah of a stone, God would raise him with that stone on the Day of Judgment. Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. So this was just a brief reminder as we start. Again, we're still in the beginning of this Ashra. As much as we can, we need to value and recognize the honor, the importance of these gatherings. How much we are in need of these gatherings to connect to Imam Hussein alayhi salam, to benefit from Imam Hussein alayhi salam, inshallah. Okay, with that, let us now move back to our topic. Yesterday we started a discussion on the importance of giving thanks, being people who in our lives are positive individuals. People who, as they would say, we don't see the cup to be half empty. Okay, we value the blessings that God has given us and we thank Allah for those blessings. We talked a little bit about this yesterday. We narrated some hadith and some ayat. I wanted to add a few more points and then move on to a second lesson from the maktab of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. Two more points about giving thanks though. So when it comes to giving thanks, we have to remember one thing, that the real type of thanks, the real shukr haqiqi, that true thankfulness that God wants from us, is not just something that is uttered on our tongue. It's not just that we pick up a tasbih and we say shukran lillah, shukran lillah, shukran lillah. That is very valuable. I'm not saying it's not valuable. But The true thankfulness is that we have to live a life of servitude to God. We obey Allah, we do what He wants from us. That is the true way of showing thanks to Allah Ta'ala. That He has given us blessings. How do we thank Allah with the blessings? God has given me a family. What a huge blessing that family is. Now the way that I have to thank Allah is by treating that family appropriately, by doing my responsibility, learning what my responsibility is to them first of all, and then treating them in that way that God wants me to treat them, which of course is not going to always be easy. At times it's going to require that I control my anger, I control my tongue, but that is what true thankfulness entails. So I'm not, again, I just want to go back to this point that I'm not saying that servitude and that remembrance of God that is on our tongue is not valuable. No, it is very valuable. We don't want to say that, oh, dua and prayer and tilawah of the Quran is only valuable when it is with hudurul qalb, when it is accompanied with concentration and understanding. We shouldn't read the Quran if we don't know Arabic. No, that's not the case at all. Okay, even just these words of hadith, of dua, of ziyarah, of the Quran have nur in them. They have blessings in them. Even if we simply utter these words, it will have an effect on us. But we need to work to go beyond that surface level relationship with the religion of Allah. Beyond just simply talking the talk, and in fact trying to move towards walking the walk. Okay, so on the one hand, reciting these words, shukran lillah, or Quran, dua, ziyah, all of that is very important, but it should be part and parcel of our overall goal of being a servant to Allah. That dua that I do should give me that energy, it should give me that relationship with God, that feeling of closeness to God, that when I get tested, when the real test comes in my life, then because of that relationship I have with God, I am able to control myself. If I limit my relationship with God to a very surface level relationship, then when I'm tested, I won't pass those tests. I won't have that deep connection with God that will help me to hold myself and be strong when I am tested. And definitely everybody will be tested in their life. Okay, so this was the first point that I wanted to make about shukr, the true shukr being the shukr amali, not the shukr lafzi. Meaning that not just the verbal thanks. Verbal thanks is valuable, but it's not as valuable as the practical thanks. Another example I thought I would quickly mention of giving thanks that comes in the Holy Quran is that of the advice that Luqman al-Hakim gives to his son. Okay, we have a very important individual in history who is a very wise individual. Both in the Holy Quran, in the Quran there's a whole surah that is named after him. The 31st chapter of the Quran is called Surat Luqman. And even in ahadith, we have many ahadith that talk about this eminent and important individual. We have in ahadith that he was not a prophet of Allah, but he was somebody who used his intellect. He thought, he pondered upon the right kind of things, maybe his responsibility about Allah Ta'ala, and he achieved a very high level because of that, because of using his intellect. He loved God and God loved him. And because of that, God gave him hikmah. He is known as Luqman al-Hakim, which we will translate as wisdom. It's not a very maybe precise translation, but for now let's just translate hikmah as wisdom and say that he is Luqman the wise. So in this, these verses of the Holy Quran where he remembered and there's a kind of a will or a piece of advice that he is giving his son that comes in the Holy Quran, the very first ayah, the very first piece of advice that he has for his son, it says the following, وَلَقَدْ آتَيْنَا لُقْمَانَ الْحِكْمَةَ أَنِشْكُرِ لِلَّهِ. The first piece of advice that Luqman had for his son is give thanks to God. This wise individual who the Ahlul Bayt remember, who Allah Ta'ala is remembering, the first piece of advice he has for his son, obviously the first one meaning the most important, right, is that give thanks to God. And then he goes on to make a nice point. وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ وَمَنْ كَفَرَ فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. That, oh my son, you should know something. God doesn't need our thanks. God doesn't stand to benefit if me and you give thanks to Him. He is not going to be harmed if me and you are ungrateful to Him. That thanks that we can give, or God forbid, that ingratitude that we can show is all to our own benefit or our own detriment. We are the ones that stand to benefit by thanking Allah. That is exactly what he says. And وَمَنْ يَشْكُرْ فَإِنَّمَا يَشْكُرُ لِنَفْسِهِ. Whoever gives thanks, he only does so for himself. وَمَنْ كَفَرَ. Whoever is ungrateful, who doesn't give thanks, they should know فَإِنَّ اللَّهَ غَنِيٌّ حَمِيدٌ. God is all needless. God is needless of them. God is ghani. He doesn't need their thanks. Okay, so these were 2 points. With that, we want to kind of wrap up this first lesson that we can take up from the maktab of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. That if we want to be followers of Imam Hussein, we want to be people who are, thank you, we want to be people who are, inshallah, walking on that path of becoming somebody who is like Hussein, a servant of Hussein, a follower of Hussein ibn Ali alayhi salam. We have to work on being a thankful person in our life, giving thanks. And yesterday and today we made some points about what exactly that means. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. The next point that I wanted to now focus on, which I'll connect to giving thanks, is that we want to be people who don't just live our lives and say whatever we want to say and do whatever we want to do without thinking. Okay, we want to be people who use our intellect, who stop and think about what we are doing. We want to be people who have a filter on our tongue, that we don't just say whatever we want to say, regardless of whether I am hurting the feelings of somebody else, regardless of whether I am talking without knowledge, judging somebody without having certainty that they really are like that. We want to be people who are nuanced, people who have a kind of a thought process that we undergo before we act. Or at the very least, if not that, we want to be people who stop and reflect on what we did and think that, okay, did I make a mistake? If I did, what can I do to now rectify that mistake, to make sure that I don't make that mistake in the future? We can connect this to the concept of giving thanks. In one of the ahadith from the fifth Imam in that same book that I mentioned yesterday, Tuhaf al-Uqul, there is one lengthy conversation where Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he's giving advice to one of his companions, Jabir. And at one point, Jabir al-Ju'fi, not the other Jabir we might be familiar with in the story of Arba'in, that's another Jabir. This is Jabir al-Ju'fi. Imam Baqir is telling Jabir al-Ju'fi, at one place he says this, that in order to give thanks to God, consider what little rizq you have to be a lot. Okay? So one of the ways Imam Baqir is teaching Jabir, his companion, that one of the ways that you can attain this level of being a thankful person is to stop and think about all the blessings you have. Even if they may appear to be little to you, the reality is everybody has so many blessings. Okay? We all have a lot of blessings in our life. Even if they may appear to be little, you should make it look to be a lot. Consider it to be a lot. And that will be a way that you can become a thankful servant of Allah. So I'm using that hadith to somehow make a relationship that one of the ways we can work on giving thanks is now this second piece of advice that we want to look at, that Imam Hussein, that Islam, that the Ahlul Bayt alayhimus salam have for us. That we want to be people who think about life, think about our actions, think about what we are doing. I mean, if we just think for an example, a simple example of one thing we can think about on a day-to-day basis is how much we owe God in terms of how, for example, our body is so perfect. We all have like such a complicated, intricate body that if one body part of ours had, God forbid, stopped working, how difficult our life would be. Like, this is an example. For somebody who has sicknesses, they can think of another example, or they could focus on this example in maybe a certain way. But generally, most of us, inshallah, we are healthy, and so this is a huge, huge blessing that sometimes we don't value. When we are young, our body is we don't even think about it. God forbid, we even abuse our body and we smoke, or we, I don't know, don't eat healthy food, we don't exercise, and then one day we regret that. Okay, so when we have that, we should value this blessing of Allah. That if one organ, one body part of ours were to become sick, how much difficulty would that put me through? But I live my life day in, day out without even thinking about what a huge blessing I have. If my kidney stopped working, how difficult would it be for me to go for dialysis? How much time, how much money, how much effort would I have to go through dialysis to take care of the function of the kidney that God has given me, right? These are blessings of Allah that if we stop and think about it, then we would somehow value what God has given us. We would somehow be able to be a thankful person. Again, I will reiterate this point that I mentioned yesterday, that everybody has difficulties in their life. Okay, it's not like anybody's life is going to be totally rosy, and life is not just distributing candies and getting everything we want. But we need to have a kind of outlook that is something that will be positive, that will allow us to progress, allow us to improve, allow us to reach those true perfection, those human spiritual perfections that we are after. If I just sit down and always complain, if I don't praise God, I don't thank God, I don't look at the positive aspects of what God has given me, then I won't be able to then use what God has given me to excel, to progress, to go forward. So this is all part of having that outlook, being thankful, thinking about God's blessings can be the means by which I work towards the goal that I have in my life. Of course, like I said, we shouldn't fool ourselves. We know that the dunya is not a place of happiness constantly, and everything is not going to always be perfect for us. In one of the ahadith, Amirul Mu'mineen alayhi salam says, فَإِنَّهَا دَارٌ. He's talking about the dunya. Imam Ali alayhi salam has very strong statements where he's like disparaging the dunya at times and putting it down and making it look really bad. In one of these kind of statements, he says, فَإِنَّهَا دَارٌ بِالْبَلَاءِ مَحْفُوفَةٌ. The dunya is an abode that has been encompassed by bala. Affliction has surrounded it. وَبِالْعِنَاءِ مَعْرُوفَةٌ. It is an abode, it is a place, the world that we live in, the material, physical world. It is a place that is known for hardship. وَبِالْغَدْرِ مَوْصُوفَةٌ. It is something that is, the characteristic of it is that it is deceitful. It deceives us. It attracts us. It makes us think that true perfection lies in dunya, money and health and power and fame. And then God forbid we spend all of our life going after that dunya, and then one day we realize that we've been deceived. And there were all these spiritual levels that we could have attained and we never attained in our life. Okay, so the second basically piece of Husseini advice that I wanted to give is that Imam Hussein alayhi salam wants us to be people who use our intellect, who think about what we are doing, where we are going, who stop to ponder upon our actions. We have so many ahadith that talk about this, that a believer is somebody who does muhasabah of himself. He spends some time in his day to evaluate his actions, to think, what was it that I said? What was it that I did today? Did I make a mistake? Did I do something wrong? And then that is a way that he can improve. He can work on himself. If he did the right thing, he gives thanks to God. If he did the wrong thing, he asks for forgiveness, and then he starts using his mind. and thinking, okay, what can I do that I don't make this mistake tomorrow? In one of the ahadith, Imam Kadhim alayhi salam says, Sallallahu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. ليس منا من لم يحاسب نفسه في كل يوم. The person who doesn't take account of himself every day is not from us. That's a very heavy statement. One of the Ahlul Bayt, these divinely appointed spiritual guides for humanity, is saying that this kind of a person is not from us. They do not have that connection to us that they should have. Okay, what is the person who is not from us? Somebody who doesn't take account of himself. And then how does a person, how is he supposed to take account of himself? فَإِنْ عَمِلَ حَسَنًا استزاد الله وإن عمل سيئا استغفر الله منه وتاب إليه. This person who takes account of himself, if he sees that he has performed a good deed, he asks Allah to give him more, to increase him in this goodness. And if, God forbid, he sees that he did a mistake, he committed a sin, he looked at something that he was not supposed to have looked at, he said something he was not supposed to have said, he will ask for forgiveness from Allah. And then he will seek forgiveness. Part of seeking forgiveness, my dear brothers and sisters, which we can get from other ahadith, is that we need to make a plan to make sure we don't keep making these mistakes again and again. We need to talk to people who can guide us. If we don't know what the right course of action is, let's say I have an addiction. I know I shouldn't be addicted to this thing, but day in and day out, I'm still addicted to it. I'm not changing my mistake. I need to work on it. I need to think about, if nothing is working, I need to go to an expert. I need to go seek the advice of a pious, sincere, sympathetic, not somebody who just wants money, somebody who actually wants to help me. I need to seek their advice and inshallah get the guidance that I need to then work on what I got to do to improve myself and break this addiction that I have. Let me give you guys a story here, inshallah, and then maybe we will move to the musibah after that. There was a famous mystic, a famous poet from the city of Tehran who lived more than 100 years ago. He died less than 100 years ago, but maybe it was about 100 years ago when he was writing this poetry that I'm going to, for example, give you an example of. His name is Abul Hassan Tawhidi Amin, but his when he would write poetry, the name that he would use is Tuti Hamadani. Okay, so he was somebody from the city of Hamadan, another city in Iran, and he had moved to Tehran. He was a young guy at that time. He had a lot of interest in religion. He studied a little bit, but not too much. He never wore the clothing of a scholar. He didn't study in the Islamic seminary a lot. But he had a close connection with some of the awliya of Allah, like Ayatollah Shah Abadi, one of the mystics. And he himself attained, as we'll see, a very high level. He was somebody, for his day job, what he used to do is he used to sew. He was a khayyat. And he lived in an area of Tehran, even now it is there, it's called Lalezar. Okay, prior to the Islamic Revolution, this was a very bad area of the city with like nightclubs and a lot of haram things happening in that area. But it was a wealthy area of the city. So he could make a lot of money. When he would sew his clothes, he could make a lot of money if he lived in that area and he ran his business in that area. He was a young, talented person, and so initially he was over there. But then he thought about what he was doing. And he realized that by living in this area of the city, which is so full of sin, which is so full of indecency, he's going to lose his modesty and chastity and purity and religion. And so out of fear for God, out of fear for his own akhirat, his own purity, he left that area of Tehran and he moved to the south of Tehran, close to the blessed haram of Shah Abdul Azim, one of the great Sadat who is buried there. There's a haram there. It's a city called Ray. Now it's just in the south of Tehran. So the same clothes that he could have got 25 tumans for, okay, back in the day, 25 tumans was a lot of money. Those of you who have been to Iran today, 25,000 tumans is not even a lot of money. The same clothes that he could have got 25 tumans for, he was only going to get like 3 tumans for it. But out of that fear for his purity, out of that fear of committing sin, he left that indecent area of Tehran and he moved to the south of Tehran. And God gave him so many blessings. The doors of spirituality opened for him in his life. In the middle, when he would be working, he would stop and he would write poetry. And poetry that today people of spirituality, mystics, scholars really appreciate this poetry. For those of you, maybe there are some in the crowd who know some Persian, I'll just read a couple of lines of his poetry. In some of his lines of poetry, he says, Ilahi dili deh ke jay to bashad. Lisani ke dar vei sanay to bashad. He is drowned in the love of God. He's talking to God. He's saying, oh God, give me a heart that is the place for you. My heart should be filled with none other than you. Give me a tongue that is the place of praising you, that is used basically to praise you. Ilahi atakun bifikram tunuri ke mahsul fikram du'ay to bashad. Oh God, make my thoughts be such that they are, the product of these thoughts is that I do dua to you. Okay, one person uses his mind, his thoughts, and he uses it for an evil purpose. He uses it to deny religion, to attack Islamic values. He's saying, no, oh God, make my thoughts be thoughts that are used to go towards you, to do dua to you. One more line. Ilahi chenan kun ke in abd miskin baraya to khanad baraya to bashad. He's saying that, oh God, make it such that whatever I do should be for you. Okay, so my dear brothers and sisters, this is an example of a young man who used his thought. This is somebody who followed that maktab of Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, where he used his thought correctly. He used his mind, his thoughts to evaluate what should he do in his life to be a good servant of Allah. And he was able to maintain his purity and achieve such a high level by doing that. I wanted to connect this more to Imam Hussein, but let's leave it for today, inshallah. Let's move now to the musibah, inshallah. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ali Muhammad. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك عليكم مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار ولا جعله الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. Peace be upon you, O heir of Adam, direction of angels in prostration. Peace be upon you, O trustee of Nuh, fastest and widest ship of salvation. Peace be upon you, son of Ibrahim, O the one chosen as Dhibhun Azim. Peace be upon you, cherished of Musa, who sets water gushing from eyes as the streams. Peace be upon you, O breath of Isa, whose being revives hearts dead for certain. Peace be upon the love of Muhammad, one who was robbed of his ring and turban. Peace be upon you, O Rose of Ali, whose children were tortured without reason. Peace be upon the brother of Hassan, he who received arrows but no kafan. We were talking about joining the caravan of Imam al-Hussein. Let us go remember that real caravan of Imam al-Hussein, that on a night like this, or on a day like tomorrow rather, on the 2nd of Muharram, this caravan will now reach the land of Karbala. Imagine the state of the women and the children in this caravan. When they left Medina, when they left Mecca, they must have thought that we are going towards a victory. Thousands of people are calling Imam al-Hussein. We are going to go. There will be people who will support our Imam and we will win in this battle against Yazid. But as that caravan was making its way from Mecca to a place where they were stopped by Hur and then in a different direction until they reached the land of Karbala, at some point, no, they realized that things have changed. The situation in Kufa has changed. Of course, Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam was the Imam. He had ilmul ghaib, and even if he didn't have ilmul ghaib, maybe he would have been able to foretell what would happen. He knew what his end situation would be. It is narrated that as Imam al-Hussein was leaving the city of Mecca, so initially, you know, he was in Medina, then he left Medina when he did not pledge allegiance to Yazid al-Mal'un. He went to Mecca and he remained in Mecca for more than 4 months. In this time in Mecca, thousands and thousands of letters of the people of Kufa were sent to him, calling him to Kufa. Eventually, just as the Hajj is starting in the month of Dhul Hijjah, the Hajj in those days was a ritual that important individuals in society had to be participating in. But this important grandson of the Prophet ﷺ, no, he's not going to participate. As other people are going to start their Hajj, Imam al-Hussein exits from the state of Ihram. He does tawaf, sa'i, he leaves the state of Ihram and he makes his way towards Kufa. It is narrated that at this point he gives a khutbah as he's leaving Mecca. What a strange, ajib khutbah. In this khutbah he is foretelling his own, he's reciting his own musibah, he's foretelling what's going to happen to him. At one point in this khutbah he says, خط الموت على ولد آدم مخط القلادة على جيد الفتاة. He's already talking about death. He says that death has made a mark on human beings the way a necklace makes a mark on a young lady's neck. What is he saying? Maybe he's saying that death is a reality. Death is something beautiful. It's something that he knows he is going towards. He goes on to say, وَمَا أَوْلَهَنِي إِلَىٰ أَسْلَافِي إِشْتِيَاقَ يَعْقُوبَ إِلَىٰ يُوسُف. How much do I long to meet my forefathers? How much does he miss his father Ali alayhi salam, his grandfather, his great-grandfather? Then he says, وَخُيِّرَ لِي مَصْرَعٌ أَنَا لَاقِيهِ. God has ordained a place that I am going to be killed, I'm going to fall. It is as if I can see that the wolves of the desert are ripping my body parts apart in a place between Nawawis and Karbala. Nawawis was a place close to Karbala. He says, in this land I can see that I'm going to be killed. So Imam al-Hussein, he knew what was going to happen. Let us go forward now. That caravan makes its way to the land of Karbala. Many things happen along this journey, some of which, inshallah, in the upcoming nights we will recount. At one point he meets Zuhair ibn al-Qayn, who joins with him. Some people join with him, some people leave him apparently on this journey. At one point he meets Hur and the army of Hur, and they stop him from going to Kufa. And they come to an agreement that they will go in another direction. Neither will he return back to Medina, nor will he proceed towards Kufa. The time comes that Imam al-Hussein comes to a land on the 2nd of Muharram. He asks the people, "Ma yuqalu li hadha al-ard?" What is the name of this land we have come to? And he is told, this land is called Karbala. Imam al-Hussein alayhi salam, he is always thinking of Allah. He is connected to Allah. He is immersed in the love of Allah. Right away he does dua, Allahumma inni a'udhu bika min al-karbi wal-bala. That, oh Allah, I seek refuge from you from karb and bala, from difficulties and calamities. My dear brothers and sisters, at this point it is narrated in the books of history that Imam al-Hussein, he gathers his family, they disembark from their horses, from their camels, he gathers his children, he gathers his sisters and his family. ثم نظر إليهم فبكى ساعة. He looks at them, he looks at their blessed faces, and he begins to cry. He says, "Oh Allah, we are the progeny of your Prophet Muhammad. We have been taken out of our land. We have been taken out of the haram of our grandfather. This is what the Banu Umayyah have done to us." We would ask Imam al-Hussein, "Oh Imam al-Hussein, when you are looking at that family of yours with that ilmul ghayb that you have, what is it that is making you cry? Oh Hussein." Maybe he would tell us that he was looking at the hands of Abu al-Fadl al-Abbas. Maybe he was telling us that he was looking at the cheeks of his daughter, thinking what will happen to her on the night of Sham Ghariban. Maybe he would tell us that he is looking at the earrings of his sister Kulthum. ألا لعنة الله على القوم الظالمين وسيعلم الذين ظلموا أي منقلب ينقلبون. ماتم حسين.
There's no one doing sweet ziyara. Ali. It's empty. I can't. It's 1%. I can. You want to do ziyara? You need on your phone. Ziyara Ashura. Is this what you want? Ziyara Ashura is it here? No, I don't want to say Ziyara Ashura. Bro, or you do ziyara. If you can't do it, do ziyara. Anybody missing ziyara? Is there just ziyara to like Muharram? أفلح من صلى على محمد وآل محمد. أزور سيدي ومولاي ومعتمدي ورجاي دخري ودخيرتي في آخرتي ودنياي الإمام الحسيني عليه السلام الله زيارة مني ونيابة عن والداي وعن والدي والداي وعن إخواني وأخواتي وعن جميع المؤمنين والمؤمنات قربة طاعة إلى الله تعالى. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله، السلام عليك يا ابن رسول الله، السلام عليك يا خيرة الله وابن خيرته، السلام عليك يا ابن أمير المؤمنين وابن سيد الوصيين، السلام عليك يا ابن فاطمة سيدتي نساء العالمين، السلام عليك يا ثار الله وابن ثاره والوتر الموتور، السلام عليك وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك، عليكم مني جميعا سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار. يا أبا عبد الله، لقد عظمت الرزية وجلت وعظمت مصيبة بك علينا وعلى جميع أهل الإسلام، وجلت وعظمت مصيبتك في السماوات على جميع أهل السماوات. فلعن الله أمة أسست أساس الظلم والجور عليكم أهل البيت، ولعن الله أمة دفعتكم عن مقامكم وأزالتكم عن مراتبكم التي رتبكم الله فيها، ولعن الله أمة قتلتكم، ولعن الله الممهدين لهم بالتمكين من قتالكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم ومن أشياعهم وأتباعهم وأوليائهم. يا أبا عبد الله، إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم إلى يوم القيامة. ولعن الله آل زياد وآل مروان، ولعن الله بني أمية قاتبة، ولعن الله ابن مرجانة، ولعن الله عمر بن سعد، ولعن الله شمرا، ولعن الله أمة أسرجت وألجمت وتنقبت لقتالك. بأبي أنت وأمي لقد عظم مصابي بك، فأسأل الله الذي أكرم مقامك وأكرمني بك أن يرزقني طلب ثارك مع إمام منصور من أهل بيت محمد صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم اجعلني عندك وجيها بالحسين عليه السلام في الدنيا والآخرة. يا أبا عبد الله، إني أتقرب إلى الله وإلى رسوله وإلى أمير المؤمنين وإلى فاطمة وإلى الحسن وإليك بموالاتك وبالبراءة ممن قاتلك ونصب لك الحرب، وأبرأ ممن أسس أساس الظلم والجور عليكم، وأبرأ إلى الله وإلى رسوله ممن أسس أساس ذلك وبنى عليه بنيانه وجرى في ظلمه وجوره عليكم وعلى أشياعكم. برئت إلى الله وإليكم منهم، وأتقرب إلى الله ثم إليكم بموالاتكم وموالاة وليكم وبالبراءة من أعدائكم والناصبين لكم الحرب، وبالبراءة من أشياعهم وأتباعهم. إني سلم لمن سالمكم وحرب لمن حاربكم وولي لمن والاكم وعدو لمن عاداكم. فأسأل الله الذي أكرمني بمعرفتكم ومعرفة أوليائكم ورزقني بالبراءة من أعدائكم أن يجعلني معكم في الدنيا والآخرة، وأن يثبت لي عند عندكم قدم صدق في الدنيا والآخرة، وأسأله أن يجعلني المقام المحمود لكم عند الله، وأن يرزقني طلب ثاري مع إمام هدى ظاهر ناطق بالحق منكم، وأسأل الله بحقكم وبالشأن الذي لكم عنده أن يعطيني بمصابي بكم أفضل ما يعطي مصاب بمصيبة، مصيبة ما أعظمها وأعظم رزيتها في الإسلام وفي جميع السماوات والأرض. اللهم اجعلني في مقامي هذا ممن تناله منك صلوات ورحمة ومغفرة. اللهم اجعل محياي محيا محمد وآل محمد، ومماتي ممات محمد وآل محمد. اللهم إن هذا يوم تبركت به بنو أمية وابن آكلة الأكباد، اللعين ابن اللعين على لسانك ولسان نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله في كل موطن وموقف وقف فيه نبيك صلى الله عليه وآله. اللهم لعن أبا سفيان ومعاوية ويزيد بن معاوية، عليهم منك اللعنة أبد الآبدين. وهذا يوم فرحت به آل زياد وآل مروان بقتلهم الحسين صلوات الله عليه. اللهم فضاعف عليهم اللعن منك والعذاب الأليم. اللهم إني أتقرب إليك في هذا اليوم وفي موقفي هذا وأيام حياتي بالبراءة منهم واللعنة عليهم وبموالاة لنبيك وآل نبيك عليه وعليهم السلام. اللهم لعن أول ظالم ظلم حق محمد وآله وآل محمد وآخر تابع له على ذلك. اللهم لعن العصابة التي جاهدت الحسين وشايعت وبايعت وتابعت على قتله، اللهم لعنهم جميعا. السلام عليك يا أبا عبد الله وعلى الأرواح التي حلت بفنائك. عليك مني سلام الله أبدا ما بقيت وبقي الليل والنهار، ولا جعل الله آخر العهد مني لزيارتكم. Everybody all together. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين. اللهم خص أنت أول ظالم باللعن مني، وابدأ به أول ثم لعن الثاني والثالث والرابع. اللهم لعن يزيد خامسا، ولعن عبيد الله بن زياد وابن مرجانة وعمر بن سعد والشمرة وآل أبي سفيان وآل زياد وآل مروان إلى يوم القيامة. Now in sujood, if you can go. الحمد اللهم لك حمد حمد الشاكرين لك على مصابهم. الحمد لله على عظيم رزيتي. اللهم ارزقني شفاعة الحسين يوم الورود، وثبت لي قدم صدق عندك مع الحسين وأصحاب الحسين الذي بذلوا مهجهم دون الحسين عليه وعليهم السلام. صلوا على محمد وآل محمد.